When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and this is another episode of the PR Training Lab. This is where I take an application from one of you listeners, and I make a schedule for you, a running plan for you, recorded live here on the podcast. It's how you can get to know me a little better, my process, and maybe you can learn how to make a training plan for yourself. Of course, if you would like to win a free training plan created by me live on the show, first you have to do two things. Number one is write an Apple podcast review. Spotify reviews are great, but the algorithm still loves Apple. So even if you're not an Apple user, you can create an account and create a Apple podcast review. And then the step number two is to go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. When you do that, there'll be a form to fill out so I can learn about you, your situation, and figure out how to make a training plan for you. And you can follow along with the questions that I ask, which are in the show notes. So today's runner is Samantha. She is 42 years old, and I ask everybody, where did you learn about the Planted Runner? And she says on Reddit. I did not know I was on Reddit. I'm not a big Reddit user, but occasionally I'll pop over there when a search leads me that way. And I did not know I was on Reddit, but thank you to whoever posted me. If you are a Reddit user, please keep doing what you're doing. What is the date of Samantha's race? She says, no goal race. I love running, but I want to make it a part of my training, not the whole focus. I would like to get faster, but I'd also like to get stronger in the gym and bike once or twice a week. I've always been race focused, and it's time for a change. Okay, awesome. I have been talking a lot about this. I did a recent podcast about how to change into a more athletic training style instead of race focused. And what I mean by athletic running is when you use running as your main source of cardiovascular fitness, but you're a more well-rounded athlete doing other things, especially strength training, mobility, jump training. Now, I like to avoid the word hybrid because that instantly makes everybody think of high rocks. This is not high rocks, but yeah, it is a hybrid form of training. You're not training to be the best runner possible. You're not training to be the best weightlifter possible. You're training to be an all-around athlete, healthy, badass kind of person, right? How long has Samantha been running? She says 15 years, and she is an American, so we'll be using miles, but I will translate into metric. Does she have any injuries? She says not really, some ankle issues in the past, but she's fine now. So I always ask about injuries because that's definitely going to determine how we build your schedule. We don't want to overload you. Obviously, I don't want to do that for anyone. But if there's particular injury concerns, I definitely want to know before creating a schedule. Now, even though she is not racing, I do want to set some paces for her because I will be assigning her runs, not just easy runs, but might get a little speed work. So we want to get some paces in there. And if she's raced recently, which she says she's been racing for a long time, we want to know approximately how fast she runs. But if you're not a person that races, we can do all of this without paces. We can do it just on effort, easy, medium, fast. We don't need to track specific paces because the body doesn't know paces. The body knows effort. So if you are not a person that is training with specific paces, that is totally fine, especially in this era. Samantha says she hasn't raced since last year. She typically runs about a 2-hour half marathon, but she might not be that fast now. So a 2-hour half marathon translates to 5:42 per kilometer or about 9:10 per mile. So if she's racing that hard, that is her half marathon pace. So that would mean her easy pace obviously is much slower than that. Her marathon pace is much slower than that. So that is what I would use to roughly assign her paces. But again, since we're not race training, the actual paces, they're not as important as they would be when you would train for a specific race with a goal time involved. How many miles or kilometers does she run? About 15 miles a week. That's about 24 kilometers. What's the highest amount of weekly mileage you've run and how long ago was that? She says, I used to run 30 to 40 miles per week when training for a race. And that's in metric is 48 to 64 kilometers. So 30 to 40 miles a week or, 50, 60 kilometers roughly, that is serious amount of running. That is good enough to train for a half marathon. That's good enough to train for a marathon, a touch on the low side for a marathon, but still perfectly acceptable depending on where your fitness is. For somebody who is not training specifically for long distance, that's a lot. That's going to take a lot of your time. And honestly, that's too much running for somebody who is looking to do hybrid training. That's too much running for somebody who is looking to build fitness, unless you've got a lot of time, you eat a lot, and you're really focused on high volume and lifting in the gym. But for 99% of people, that's way too much running for somebody who's trying to simply incorporate running into their lives rather than it being the main focus. So we're definitely going to drop that down for her plan. What pace would you say is a very easy effort? A pace so slow that you could talk the entire time almost as easily as walking? She says 10:30 per mile, which is about 6:30 per kilometer. So that could be reasonable. That could possibly not be reasonable based on a 2-hour half marathon time. It probably is easy pace for her, like easy effort. If I was, again, training for a marathon, maybe we'd want that a touch slower. Maybe it's fine. There's no red flags there. It's probably okay. We also don't know how competitively she runs or how high effort she races. So let's say you run a 2-hour marathon and you are giving everything you got, dropping at the end. It's the hardest thing you've ever done. Or you're doing a half marathon in 2 hours and you're kind of doing 75% effort or less. That's very different when we're using these race times to gauge your fitness. We're assuming that it's the first one, that it's 100% effort or close to it. And this is the hardest thing you've done. A lot of people don't race that way. A lot of people are simply running for the distance. And yes, they're pushing themselves. Yes, it's still hard. It's hard at any pace, but it's not the seeing Jesus kind of thing, right? So again, with this kind of training, the paces aren't super important. We're going to focus on effort. So for easy running, I want her to be able to a little bit more than a jog, but something that she could easily converse. So if that means she has to take some walk breaks, that's fine. It's just about getting your aerobic fitness in, getting the cardiovascular benefits, all of that kind of thing. We're not trying to build a bunch of distance here. And we're probably not trying to build a ton of speed, but we'll get into that in just a minute. What days would you like to run? She says she'd like 2 or 3 days running, biking 1 to 2 days, lift 3 days, rest 1 to 2 days. Okay. This is totally doable. And this is actually a really fun way to get fit because we're going to do it a little bit differently. So if you follow me and listen to me talk about long distance training, what I usually do is I have you running and strength training the same day. The reason I'm doing that is we want the hard days hard and the easy days restorative. So if you have a big chunk of rest in between your hard efforts, you're able to go faster on your speed days. You're able to be fresher for your longer runs. You're able to handle the hard days better because you have really good rest days or very easy days in between. With this kind of training, we don't need to do that. So we can have running one day, strength the next day, running one day, strength the next day. And because we're not quite at the same effort level, it's okay if there's sort of a medium effort. On your strength days, I don't necessarily want a medium effort. I actually want you to work hard in the gym. I want you to feel like you're going close to failure, not necessarily failure. I think that's kind of a dangerous line to get close to, but I want you to feel like you got to work out at the end. I want you to feel challenged in the gym. You have to challenge your muscles if you want them to grow. You can't be doing light weights a million times in a row. You can, but it's going to take a whole lot more time and it's not going to be nearly effective. You can do light weights and a lot of reps, or you can do heavy weights, fewer reps. Both will build muscle, but it's a little bit different. And you're going to build more strength if you do heavier weights, lower reps. You'll build more endurance strength if you do it the other way around. And before somebody asks, well, if I do high reps, low weight, will I be more lean? I don't want these bulky muscles. Get that out of your head. If you're a woman, you're not going to get bulky. It's just not possible unless you are really, really trying. You're eating a lot. You're eating a lot of protein. You're maxing out. So if you are somebody who's new to strength training or a beginner at strength training, look, I'm trying to get heavier and it's not working. You would have to really, really focus on it. That's kind of like saying, oh, I don't really want to run at the track because I'm afraid I'll get so fast that I'll be an Olympian. It's like, probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. So don't worry about your muscle size, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a smaller woman. That is something you would have to really, really be intentional at, and you still probably wouldn't get there. Men, on the other hand, yeah. But it's the same story over there too. If you're running a lot and you're not eating for hypertrophy, you're not going to get huge muscles either. So let's take that off the table. So back to the schedule. If she is going to be running a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, and biking 1 or 2 days, lifting 3 days, resting 1 or 2 days, what is that going to look like? So I'm going to alternate her schedule. Again, that looks different than if you were to marathon or half marathon train. So what I would do for Samantha is I would have her run on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, then bike on Sundays. Okay. So that is 4 days of cardio. So 3 days of running, 1 day of biking. If she wants to do 2 days of running and 2 days of biking, that would work too. Both running and biking are going to give you the cardiovascular benefits, but running is going to have the impact force. So if there are weeks where she feels a little more beat up, then go to the bike. And if there are weeks where she's feeling strong or really feels like she wants to have more running, then 3 days of running and 1 day of biking. The lifts would be in between. And she'd double up on Monday. The reason I'd double her up on Monday is because she's biking on Sunday. So she should be relatively fresh on Monday. So she could do a speed workout Monday morning. And then after the run, she could do a lift. And then she could lift Tuesday and Thursday with a rest day on Friday. If she feels like she needs another day of rest, she could obviously take it whenever she wants and then push the schedule back. Or she could eliminate one of her run days. Probably the easiest one to eliminate would be Wednesday or maybe Saturday, but that would give her 2 rest days in a row, which isn't the end of the world. It's perfectly fine to have 2 rest days in a row. It's not great for habit building. If you're struggling with that, we want to keep moving forward, even if it's something light. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. Some of the smartest, fittest people I know are struggling with the same thing. They are, by every definition, successful, but on the inside, they are repeating the same patterns, keeping them overthinking, overfunctioning, and overreacting. Thankfully, the same concepts we use to train our bodies work on the mind. Begin with 10 is a 30-day guided mental conditioning cycle designed to strengthen the way you think, regulate emotion, direct attention, and move through uncertainty with more steadiness. Begin each day with just 10 minutes of active brain work designed to change your mind in the best way possible. Because the brain responds the same way the body does. What you practice becomes easier to access. What you repeat becomes more automatic. In just 10 minutes a day, you'll use structured repetition, breath control, and deliberate focus to strengthen calm, certainty, emotional steadiness, and the ability to direct your mind instead of being dragged by it. These are active audio workouts rooted in neuroscience and influenced by techniques used by elite athletes, because mental strength is built the same way physical strength is built, through consistent reps. The next course of Begin with 10 starts June 1st, 2026. So there's not much time to sign up if you are listening to this when it comes out. If you're listening after June 1st, 2026, you will be able to sign up for a wait list, but it will likely be a while before this opportunity comes back. Go to theplantedrunner.com/beginwith10 to claim your spot. That's theplantedrunner.com/beginwith10 with the number 10 spelled out TEN. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What kinds of non-running activities or cross-training do you do each week, and when do you do them? So obviously biking, we already talked about that. She sometimes does yoga. She says, I like strength training, but I need to be more consistent. I walk my dogs 30 minutes a day. Okay, so walking is great. Walking is great for everybody and obviously good for the dogs. The special thing about walking, especially if you're looking for body recomposition, so you're looking to lower fat while increasing muscle, walking is going to be a helpful part of that because it burns some calories, not as much as running per minute, but per mile, usually roughly the same. So it's going to take a little longer to burn some of the calories than would be running, but it's low impact. You don't have to change. You don't have to shower, hopefully. It's something you can squeeze into your day, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, or take your dogs for a walk for 30 minutes a day. That is awesome. But the other benefit of adding walking to a schedule like this, instead of more running, even instead of more biking probably, but walking doesn't tend to spike your hunger levels. So if you've noticed that you're ramping up your activity level, you will notice that your body is like, whoa, what is she doing? I need more food. I need to eat a lot more. And with walking, if you're just doing a little bit of walking, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, your body doesn't necessarily freak out and increase your hunger levels. So you don't tend to overeat when you add walking. Whereas if you add something that is higher intensity, so running, lots of biking, or, HIIT workouts, jump workouts, those can signal to your brain, we are kind of in danger here. We're burning a lot of calories. We need to go overboard on the food. And that's kind of the thing that people get kind of stuck with, is not that they're overeating exactly. It's just they're triggering hunger when they could be doing something a little gentler. So it's sometimes hard for people with a really athletic mindset, a really type A go-getter mindset, to feel like walking does anything because it's simple and chill. And we are not simple and chill. We're go competitive people. But a little bit of walking can be really good to add into any fitness routine without it overdoing it, without overtraining, without increasing hunger levels, without doing anything negative. Obviously, you can take this overboard too. You can put on the heavy vest and you can do incline and you can push it if you want to, but I'm asking you not to. Adding a little bit of walking is just so good for literally everything. So if you can add just a little bit of walking, that's going to change everything about your fitness in the easiest way possible without really any downsides. So don't overdo it, but add some walking in. Now for Samantha, she already walks her dog 30 minutes a day. I'm going to assume she does not have an extra 30 minutes to go for another walk, plus all the other stuff I'm making her do. So I'm not going to assign more walking. But if she is, let's say she's sedentary, she's at a desk all day, I would say get up and walk around every hour. I would say maybe take a little walk break, 10 minutes, 15 minutes during your lunch break, something like that. Stay a little bit active during your day. So if you're really trying to body recomposition, and to be clear, Samantha didn't say she's doing this. But if you're trying to become more athletic, think about what you're doing all day, because you can have the perfect training schedule and then sit all day long. And that's not necessarily healthy, right? That's not necessarily enough to counteract all the sitting. So you do want to make sure that your, non-exercise time, there's a little exercise in there. You're getting up and walking. One trick that some people say is to always have a big jug of water at your desk so that you drink it enough so that you have to go pee every hour. And this is not even about hydration. It's about forcing yourself to get up from your desk. So anyway, don't overhydrate. I'm not saying that, but just get up from your desk 10 minutes of every hour. I think you'll be healthier and probably more productive. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? Samantha says, I don't struggle exactly, but I'm not sure I'm optimized. I have a history of disordered eating, so tracking isn't healthy for me. But without it, I'm not sure if I'm doing things right. I'm a healthy weight for my size, but of course I would like to trade some fat for muscle if possible. I'm vegetarian, not vegan, but I'm starting to question how dairy makes me feel. Okay, a lot to unpack there. So I don't struggle exactly, but I'm not sure I'm optimized. Well, do we have to optimize everything? I think in this society, there's so many podcast bros out there that just are all about optimizing, and I get it, but also sometimes I feel like we're taking it too far. The history of disordered eating and not wanting to track, I understand that. So how do you make sure you're doing things right without tracking? So there's some things to think about there. One way you can make tracking kind of work for you is to do it preemptively. So don't track what you eat every day. Go ahead and track what you plan to eat tomorrow. And then don't actually track what you eat, but eat what you say you're going to eat. The timing of not doing it live in the moment can actually help you feel like you're more in director mode, planning mode, instead of being in character mode, if that makes sense. If you're planning ahead what you're going to eat, it's less sort of like you're in the moment. You're more projecting what you're going to eat. And it can be a way to kind of separate yourself from the actual action of counting your calories and counting your macros. You don't have to do any of this, but she is saying she's not doing anything right. So how do we know what she's doing if we're not tracking it in some way? Now, she does not have to use an app or track her macros or anything like that. It's helpful to do that very short term, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you don't really have any idea of what you're eating. It can be helpful. But yeah, it can be unhealthy long term, and it can be triggering for some people. And I totally get that. But what you can do instead is make sure you have the pieces of the puzzle correct without getting into the nitty gritty where you get too kind of obsessive compulsive about it. So what I would say for anybody, but especially plant-based eaters, we need to first think about protein. Now, we don't need to go overboard with protein. And, I would say the current guidelines are somewhere around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of weight. So do the math on that and figure out roughly what you need to have for protein. So I'll use myself as an example. So I probably under that formula need to eat somewhere between 100 and 120 grams of protein a day. Some would say a little more, some would say a little less, but for easy math, let's say I need 100 grams of protein a day. So that means if I'm having 4 meals a day, which most athletes, you better be eating 4 times a day, that means 25 grams of protein per meal. So if you just track protein and you make sure in your meals you have 25 grams, then you don't have to count calories. You don't need to worry about anything else as far as the grams and getting into the nitty gritty. But the rest of your plate is important too. The other pieces of the puzzle is you want to have a fruit or a vegetable, and then you want to have some kind of starch or whole grain. So you have those 3 pieces, fruit and vegetables, protein, starch, and whole grain, right? The fat usually takes care of itself, especially on a plant-based diet. Fat is going to be in tofu. Fat's going to be in your avocado. But you want to make sure with the vegetables and the whole grain, that's where you're getting your fiber. So fiber is super important too. You want to make sure that you are getting that. Thankfully, if you're eating mostly whole foods, you're going to be getting enough fiber. Fiber is usually not a problem for plant-based eaters. Junk food vegans, yeah, fiber can be a problem, but we're hoping that's not the case with you. So if you don't want to track, I would say just focus on getting 25 to 30 grams of protein every time you eat. And then the rest of your plate should take care of itself as long as you have a serving of vegetables and a serving of whole grain or starch. Now, of course, that you should leave room for some sweet treats. You should leave room for life. You should leave room for, not stressing about your meals. So it really depends on how optimized you're trying to be. Are you trying to be, the shredded Instagram model, or are you trying to be like a B+ body? Like you want to look good and feel good in your clothes, but you're not trying to, win any fitness awards. So it depends on where on the spectrum you want to live, but it should be something that is sustainable. No crash diets. No, I'm just going to do this for 3 months and then I'll go back to my old ways. Do something that you think that you can do for the rest of your life, which means small incremental changes. You don't want to be dropping a bunch of weight because it's just going to wreck everything and you're going to have to start all over again at an even worse level. You want to make sure that what you're doing is sustainable. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. Did you know that I was a Class 5 whitewater rafting guide in my 20s? For 3 summers, I guided guests down some of the wildest rivers in the West while the sun beat down on us and the icy water kept us cool. Hydration at the time was a rinsed out orange juice jug roped to the raft. Thankfully, today we have superior hydration. Liquid IV delivers longer lasting hydration than water alone. And right now you can get 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at checkout. I love the mandarin orange flavor and rely on it after every workout. Just 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Soak up unforgettable moments with on-the-go hydration from Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is the Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. The next thing she mentioned is she's starting to question how dairy makes me feel. Okay. Well, a lot of people can't process dairy. And that has a lot to do with where your ancestors were from. But a lot of the population has difficulty with dairy. So the obvious, simple solution is stop eating dairy. If that's not an option for you, I would say do some tests, some elimination tests, and see if dairy really is the problem. And then if lactose is the culprit, then there's lactose-free solutions if you still want to try to do dairy. I'm kind of a black and white person. I could never do that. I'm either all or nothing. So dairy is not in my diet. But I'm, if something's a problem, then maybe don't have that thing. That's kind of the way I feel about it. I don't really drink alcohol anymore because of the way it makes me feel. And so I'm not trying to drink moderately because it still makes me feel bad. I'm just not going to drink, It's kind of the same thing with dairy. If you don't want to swear off it forever, just be prepared that when you do want to indulge in it, that it might cause issues. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? Samantha says, I'm a competitive person. Another reason why I shouldn't track food. I always have to win. Ooh, okay. I like having a race on the calendar to work towards, so I'm a little nervous about training without a real date or a goal. This will be different for me. Yes, it will. Okay, I can relate to this as well. I don't really like to track food for this exact reason, because if I have a calorie goal to hit, I'm going to try to go under it. Even though I know intellectually I should try to hit it exactly, it's just something about those numbers that makes me feel like, oh, I got to win the game. And if that's your personality too, you can probably relate to that, right? So not having a race on the calendar to work towards. So yes, this is a different way of training. So when you're training for a race, you work backwards from the race and you break down what you have to do to get where you want to be. And it's almost like a math problem. Like, how do you get to this certain level of fitness in the number of weeks that you have? And you just break it down. And then you also know that this date is circled on the calendar. You know that you have to be fit for it or it's going to be painful, right? So it is something that is motivating, and you don't want to skip your workouts because you have to be fit by X date on the calendar. And then when you have a different goal of just, I want to be generally fit, you might want to sleep in one day and not get up in the morning and go for that run, because it doesn't really matter, because you don't have to get fit by a certain day. There's nothing external that's motivating you like that. So you have to find internal goals. You have to be a person that trains. Not a marathoner that's training for this particular marathon, but you train because you are athletic, and athletes train, even when there's no date on the calendar. Now, of course, there's always mini goals that you can set. There's obviously tons of goals you can set in the gym. If you're, doing biceps presses. If you're doing biceps curls with 15-pound weights, maybe your goal can be to use 20-pound weights. There's lots of ways to bump up your fitness, and there's lots of goals to reach in the gym. But, that also can have a slippery slope too. Just like chasing marathon times, you might be chasing strength goals. And whether that's healthy for you or not, we'll see. But in my case, going from being a very, very good runner to being a very average strength trainer, I'm not pushing myself with these huge weight goals because genetically I'm just never going to be excellent compared to, people who are built differently from me. So it's not like I'm trying to be elite or even really good at lifting weights. I'm going to be good for my own body and my own goals, but I'm not trying to be the best because that's just not genetically possible for me. So if you're in a similar situation where you're always going to be bad at strength training because of genetics, then maybe the goals are more fun and more light. Not literally, they should be heavy. But, maybe you can set numbers goals without them turning into more compulsive type A type goals. So if that's fun for you, do it. But it's going to be a process, changing your identity from I'm a marathon runner to I'm just somebody who gets fit. It doesn't have a catchy name. It's not very easily explainable to people at a dinner party. You're just somebody who goes to the gym, and it's not quite as impressive sounding, but I would argue that, it can be just as impressive, maybe even more, to be relatively good in a lot of areas, to be a well-rounded athlete, to have a healthier outlook. I'm not saying marathon running is unhealthy. It doesn't have to be at all. It can be amazing. But there are eras to your marathon running, and it's not necessarily going to be your whole life. So I applaud Samantha for switching it up, for trying to do something different. But yes, it is going to be a little bit of an identity shift. Your motivation has to change a little bit. Why are you doing this if there's no final exam date on the calendar? So there's going to be some soul searching that she might need to do, but it's, I think it's going to be a new era for her, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? She says, I've always been a marathoner for the past 15 years. So I'm hoping to learn to shift my identity into a new phase. Your recent podcast about this made me feel like you were talking about me. Well, yes. So I'm glad that this came in right after I did the other podcast about this, because I think this is something that people don't talk about enough, is that, marathon training, half marathon training, 5K training, all that's super great and fun. But it's not something that everyone wants to do. And it's not something that you have to sign up for the rest of your life. You can switch it up, and, you can always go back, or you can stay right where you are. It's completely up to you what brings you joy and what makes you feel the best. That is it for this episode of the PR Training Lab. If you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, 2 steps to do that: write an Apple Podcast review, and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab to enter. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. Of course, reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next, because I read every single one. Have a great run today.